Henry, it's so great to have you on the podcast. I've been looking forward to this one for some time now.
Well, Ryan, eh, us guys need to talk, right?
We do need to talk, but it seems like it's an increasing rarity. I think that we used to talk more often probably than we do now. And I heard somebody say to me that we're so much better equipped to talk with people across the globe, but it's harder for us to talk to people across the kitchen table than it's ever been.
Yeah.
It's kind of an
You know, I,
interesting concept.
I haven't thought of it in terms of, the more you say it, more and more nowadays. But when I was a kid, my dad started every Sunday morning, he'd rouse me out of bed at 6 o'clock and take me to breakfast with his best friend. And I saw that from an early age. And then he and his best two friends every day, literally every day for 40 years. Mid morning, their businesses were close to each other. Mid morning, they'd take a 10 o'clock coffee break and just sit down and talk. And they do it again mid afternoon. They did that every day for like 40 years. And it's just, because I'm a golfer, I've played competitive golf my whole life and I'm a regular group and all that. I I get a lot of that with hunting and fishing, but a lot of guys they've never even seen it or hadn't gotten into the pattern or modeling but it's really important. It is vitally important.
Yeah, I envy that a bit. In fact, after this conversation, I'm driving to a neighboring town and visiting some friends. We're going to lunch. These are hunting buddies of mine, so we try to get together as often as we can. And man, that's been really refreshing. I haven't done that for a lot of my life, but I remember growing up in a small town in southern Utah, and there was the Parowan Cafe. So if anybody's listening that's from Parowan, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's always a group of men that get together, like you said, and they have coffee and they talk. I don't know what they're talking about. I never got invited, but I was a young man at the time. But man, it was pretty cool to see those guys get together and talk. And maybe they were debating, maybe they were pouring over politics or women or whatever. I don't know, but I think that's a lost art that we should try to reestablish.
I recommend it on a number of levels with the CEOs I work with. I always try to have them in some sort of a really small group. In fact, YPO has a great structure of this where they put them in forums that once a month, Young Presidents Organization, they put them in groups of about 8 or 10. And once a month, those guys for years spend an entire day together and they process life. And a lot of them will tell you, it's like my church. I've gone through, tough marriage times with them, tough business times with them. And I always tell people, both business and personal, you need to have a structured kind of small group of guys that you get together with. It's so important.
Yeah. I think that plays right into the topic of your latest book, which is on trust. And as I was reading through the book, it was interesting because you led off with the phrase "trust me," and I've actually made over the past several years a conscious effort not to say things like that
Yep.
because I feel like if I have to say that, then I actually haven't done the real work of trust and rapport and caring about people and empathy and all that goes into building trust. Like I should never have to explain that somebody could trust me. They should just automatically know. Do you agree with that or am I off on that?
Well, in fact, what I actually said, around that in the book was I said, when I hear that phrase, I think my hair catches on fire. I see,
Yeah.
sirens, hear sirens or something. Because trust, I kind of set it up with it's just a fact that trust fuels all of life. I mean, literally, we've been sitting here talking for a couple of minutes and you haven't even noticed, but you've been breathing. And you haven't noticed because your system is built with a very complicated algorithm, biologically, neurologically, physiologically, psychologically, always 24/7 in the background. It's running one question: am I safe?
Mm.
And the moment that the system determines that we're not safe in some way, it hits pause. If you had smelled a fume and your system said, whoa, I don't know if this air is okay to breathe, you would have hit pause. And that happens in business, it happens in marriage, it happens in relationships, where the system is always at a very, very nonverbal level, primarily before anything, asking the question, am I safe with this person? And it might be your wallet, it might be giving somebody a promotion, it might be saying the next sentence to your wife. It's determining, am I safe? And we go from there, and that's how things go forward, or it's how things break down.
I'm interested in this context, this concept of safety, because uh, I think a lot of the times we undermine safety. And if I were to look at it, I would think intuitively that the reason safety is diminished is because of our erratic behavior. So we might show up one day as, for example, to our spouse as gentle and kind and caring, and then the next day we might show up as disciplinary and authoritarian and rigid. And I'm wondering if that instability is the greatest erosion to safety, or if there's something else.
Well, it's hard to say the greatest. It's kind of like if you could say one thing, it's important in life. Well, I can't pick one. Do you want air, water, or food? I mean,
Sure. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Point taken.
and so what, in fact, in the book, I took all the research on trust and the psychological stuff, the business stuff, the leadership stuff, the neurological stuff, and you take all of that, and it really, if you do a factor analysis, like what is all of this saying? There's really five things that drive the trust system inside of us. And, I kind of sort of put them in an order for a reason, but the fifth one is what you're referring to, and that's track record,
Mm.
which basically is about how our minds build mental maps. We have to build a mental map to do anything. When you walk down to the fridge this morning, to get a cup of coffee and put milk in it or whatever you do, you just went because you've done it 1,000 times, and your mind has a map of how that works. But if somebody put a chair out in the aisle on the way down, it would have interrupted your map. And when we have interactions with people, we're kind of as good as our last interaction for the most part. If you go in and talk to your boss and say, "Oh, I got this problem, I did this," and all of a sudden they go, "You did what? I can't believe," and you get one of those, you walk out of there, and the next time you got an issue, you go, "Well, I can't talk to him." And
Right.
that might be a wife has an interaction like that, or your teenager. And so this track record, our minds learn what what we can expect. Now you can have a screw up if there's a pattern of good interactions, and then the person actually gets concerned about you. Go, gosh, I wonder what's wrong with him today. That's not him. That's out of character.
Mm.
That's not how he usually is. But if we're building a track record where there's enough of those, then that is a big trust breakdown. Or a team member at work. If the team can't depend on them to do something, there's a track record for that. Everything starts to frazzle.
Yeah. I'm interested in a big component of the book that you wrote is in rebuilding trust. I just got an email yesterday, I think it was, where I think there was some infidelity issues on a man's part, and him and his wife apparently are trying to work through that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how quickly one action, and that's in my mind, that's pretty significant. That's not insignificant. That's a pretty severe weighted decision with regards to infidelity. But if they're
Yeah.
working on it, all the power to them. It's always interesting to me how quickly we can erode and diminish our trust and how long it takes to build it up. And I'm very curious about what we can do. And I hate to ask it like this, but I want to bring it up this way: is what can we expect with regards to timelines for rebuilding trust, that sort of
Yeah.
thing?
It's a really important question because in human relationships, trust gets dinged. People screw up. There's felonies and there's misdemeanors, right? And like you're saying, the big ones are definitely harder. It's when we talk about rebuilding it, though. I think it's really important to understand what are the building blocks of trust across the board, even the first time or after it's been broken. And let me give you um, I'm gonna just list the five real quick because I think that
Yeah.
that'll uh, help us navigate a lot of these.
Sure.
But the very first thing that's got to happen for us to trust somebody is number one, we have to feel like they understand us. In other words, that they get you. They know what you need, they know what you want, they know what hurts you, they know what matters to you, they know what scares you. And if you feel, I mean, that's basically this understanding thing. You hear a lot about it, but this is the deepest neurological wiring we have is when we feel like somebody empathizes, that they hear us, they get us, they see us. How many times you go into, talk to a boss and you come out, the team's waiting outside, what do you say? And you go, well, he didn't get it. And you feel like he hadn't connected with what I was trying to tell him. And from the time a baby enters the world, the mom's not saying just trust me. What's happening is that their experience of, they're wet or cold or enraged or whatever, the mirror neurons begin to kick in where she's there with, tone and looking them in the eyes and very present. So the other person knows you're with me. And we feel like somebody's with us and they get it, they hear us, they understand us, then the system begins to open up. I was talking about this, Ryan, with a leadership at a leadership conference one day. A guy walks up to me and says, I'm the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI. And everything you just described is our entire training program. Walk into a bank, guy's got a bomb strapped to him. You don't walk in and try to convince him, get him to trust you and say, dude, this is a bad idea. But mainly
Right.
that's what people do. They try to talk people into, buying this or believe in me or, this is going to be good for you or whatever. You say, we go in, we say, hey, I'm Ryan and they sent me to talk to you. What's your name? And they tell him, he gets a name. He goes, so tell me, how do we get here today? What's going on? And starting with first just curiosity about who this person is, what's going on, how did they end up in this mess? What are the forces working against them? And they start to draw them out. And when they have that empathy, in fact, Chris Voss talks about this in his book. He said, you'll actually see people start to nod on the other side. And that's just like a baby. You give them something pleasurable, they nod. You give them something they don't like, they turn their head and say no.
Good
But
point.
that's the system. I mean, you'll make so many more sales if you listen and draw out of the person what they need about this product, what do they need it to do, what are the issues they deal with. And a lot of people skip that first one. So first we have to feel understood. The second one is we have to feel like
Before
somebody's,
you get to that one, Henry, can I just go
yeah,
back to that understanding? Because I've been thinking about this a lot with regards to that level of understanding. And I think the greatest factor in that is communication. I've been around a lot of people in my life who have desires and goals and ambitions and dreams and things they like and things they don't like, but they're unwilling or unable to communicate it.
yeah,
And that makes it very hard to build trust. And I've had other situations where people have been so open about what they like and what they don't like and what their boundaries are and how they'll be treated, and almost a little taken back at first, but it's so refreshing to actually run across somebody who's willing to communicate what they want, what their dreams are,
yeah.
how they want to accomplish it, what they want from you, what they don't want from you. It's very nice to actually have somebody in your circle who communicates that way.
Like it gives you a path to take the next step.
Right.
You know who they are and what you're dealing with. It's interesting that you use the word refresh because that's what happens. The system kind of comes to life when somebody actually hears us. Here's a little interesting experiment. At the next cocktail party or, standing around at lunch at a business offsite or soccer game, just watch people in your conversations and watch the ones that they say, how you doing? You say, oh, well, gosh, we're trying to get back in we went on this vacation and crashed the car and it was a big mess and my kid broke his leg or whatever. Watch the ones that say, oh my gosh, it sounds terrible. What did y'all do? Where the response is wanting more from you versus the guy that goes, oh yeah, man, we went on vacation, and that all of a sudden instantly it's flipped. And you feel shut down and you feel like they're not interested, they don't care, they don't know. So it's a big deal. It is a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah. All right.
In
So
fact,
we've got
I gave an
understanding. Oh, go
assignment.
ahead.
I gave an assignment to every day for our boundaries.me subscribers. I send out a one thing video, and it's I want you to do one thing today, and that's
Okay.
sort of a little action step of the day. I sent one out the other day. Said in your conversations today, I want you to listen 51% of the time,
Hmm.
and think how many times you have to go, oh. I got everything they're saying makes me want to talk about me.
Right.
That's they're not connecting with you primarily until they felt heard.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of times we're just hearing what people say so that we can interject our own thoughts and perspective. I look, I'm a professional talker, so I get it. And I tend to err on the side of opening my mouth maybe too often, but I do try to ask poignant questions because I do care about people. And you used a great word, curiosity. I think that's the key, being actually curious about what people are going through.
I think that curiosity is the most undervalued trait interpersonally. Everything it is in life too. People come in with confirmation bias all the time. They see one point, they think they know, instead of trying to draw out more about why do you think that way? And that's a lot of the answer that people are not using in, you know, even in a marriage. It's like, your wife comes in and she's talking about whatever it is, and instantly we'll go, well, why don't you just do this? And they don't care a lot of times about your answer.
Oh, they care. They care, but it's on the side of you piss them off and it's not they care. They're not indifferent to it. I'll say it that way.
Well, they can't process the material about it until they feel
Sure.
like you've been curious about what it actually did to them, how it feels to them, and all of that. They just have to be heard first, and that's neurological. I mean, it's like trying to fight the laws of physics.
Yeah. All right. So we've got understanding, and then of the five factors, what would be next in that equation?
Well, the next one is we pretty quickly sense somebody's motive or their intent. You know, people can listen to us, but then we feel like everything really is. I mean, even in a business situation, you'll start to feel like, do they care more about just making this sale, or do they care about that this is going to be good for me?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to work for me. You know, good relationships have got to be mutually gratifying. We all have desires and appetites, and we have to have those gratified by the other party. And it's got to go both ways. And whenever we feel like, how many times you've been on a team in a work situation, and the team is working on something? There's this, transcendent goal. This is what we're all trying to do. But there's one person, they got an agenda, and they're always trying to push it might help their department, or it might just be their what they want to drive. But you feel like it ends up always just about what's good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And once we see, in a marriage, when the marriage gets oriented around just one person's needs, and the motive is always to try to, get everybody to do what they want, we just unplug. We want to know somebody's got my back. And the best friends and business associates you have are the ones that you feel like they've got my back, even when I'm not there. If somebody's going to trash me over here and I know that person's in that meeting who I really trust, I'm covered. they're looking out for me. And when when people begin to sense that, gosh, it really makes them happy when this works for me, when I do well, when this is good for me, then that's the next, like a lock opening up, in the Panama Canal. That's the next gate that opens. They've got my best interest at heart as well as their own. We need to feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you're talking about uh, the win-win scenario, right? Where it's not just about
Yeah.
you, but it's not just about them, and trying to find some common ground, some commonality. But I think one thing I've lacked on in my life is not that the motive is there. I mean, the motive is there. I mean, I have a desire to serve people, but one area that I struggle with is empathy. So if people are struggling with a certain aspect of life, it's not that I'm trying to force or coerce or manipulate them into doing something that I think would be good for them. It may feel like that, but my motive is pure. Like I do really want, somebody to thrive. It's just my delivery may be lacking quite a bit.
But in either case, it's for them,
Right.
and that's what we really have to feel. That in the book I talk about, I just had two total knee replacements in the last couple of years, and a lot of pain. It was awful. 2.5 years I was basically in a wheelchair, and so I go to I'm picking a surgeon, right? And I go to the surgeon, the one that was, head of everything. This is the guy and all this. Name
Right.
the, I can name the institution, but I go in, and he's empathic and he cares, and I feel that. But then about, after he starts to examine me, he goes, "Hey guys, come in here," and he calls in 3 or 4 residents. And so he puts me on the table and says, "Now you see this knee? See that muscle right there?" And he starts to move. He said, This is exactly what we're doing in that research project. And I want y'all to use him, is because we'll be presenting it in Cleveland, and all of a sudden I'm feeling like he's not there for me. He's there for
Right.
building his empire.
Right.
And
Right.
you can feel when somebody really, certainly. I give you another example. We just bought a property, a house, and the agent that we used, we looked at so many properties that she said no to us. She said, I know it's great. I just don't think that with what y'all described, this is the best area or whatever. She could have closed so many deals,
Of course.
but I learned pretty early I can trust this woman. She's not just trying to get a commission. She knows what we want, and she's on a hunt to find out the best thing for us, even if it doesn't cost us much. Even if it's a lower, and the trust that we built with her just because of that, it was huge.
Yeah. Well, I think even with your first scenario, there's an opportunity there to even in the same circumstances to do that a little bit more tactfully. Maybe it's asking you if we can bring these residents in because this is a unique case and I care about these residents and they've probably never seen this before. And would you feel comfortable if I explained to them what was going on so that they can improve their performance and they can improve as surgeons?
Yeah.
Same scenario, different communication, different motive than, hey, just let me worry about the research paper I'm working on.
It's a big deal. Like in a business scenario, even when you're choosing a vendor, the difference between the ones that really understand, like, look, if this platform goes down, what it does to us, and they're really looking out for that. And then they come back and they call and say, I was thinking about what you said, and I think we could do some things that um, would help ensure that doesn't happen. We could add this or that, and you sense that they're over in their corner, not thinking about how to close the deal. They're over in their corner, how to make it better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And husbands and wives, I've made this mistake. A friend says, "Hey, you want to play golf on Saturday?" And I look at my account. Shoot, yeah, I can do that. let's tee off at 11 versus I I might be able to do that. Let me check with Tori because I don't know exactly how that's going to affect, her schedule or things she has in mind. Even something as simple as that, where she knows that I'm for her interests, even when I'm thinking about mine.
Mm.
That is a big deal. When she feels like you got her back, how this is going to affect the family, it is a big deal. In fact, John Gottman, who's one of the great marriage researchers, he calls a betrayal, the definition of betrayal is when one party acts in any way without thinking about how that's going to affect or the interests of the other.
Mm.
That's a good way to think about it.
That is. I also think there's a time horizon on some of these things. So if your time horizon is short term, you're probably going to do it in what's your own best interest, right? Like it's going to be transactional, even from um, sexual intimacy. If you're just worried about getting laid, for example, like you're going to do and say things that are manipulative, that are coercive, because that's all you're worried about. And you're not building any sort of rapport or trust with somebody else. But if you are truly trying to build trust over the long term, I
Right.
think that you're going to say and do things in a more empathetic, caring, kind, compassionate way than just trying to get whatever your desire or will is.
That is that's a big. We spent a lot of time there because, and then yeah, I won't say what I was going to say, but
Well, look, I think there's a lot of guys who are listening to this, and I'm one of them who, I'm good with words. I can be manipulative. I can say things that I feel like another person might need to hear to get what I want, and I have to be very aware of that and ask myself: am I really trying to serve another person, or am I just self-serving right now? It's something I really try to keep on my radar because I know how powerful my words and actions can be with other people.
you're exactly. I mean, we all do it. Tori and I still laugh about the first year we were together. Her birthday came around, and I said, I have got the greatest plan for your birthday. She goes, what? And I said, let's go on a golf weekend to like Palm Springs or something. And I'll never forget this. She looked at me and she goes, whose birthday is it?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, well, you can go get a massage while I golf. I mean, you can do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, I thought it was great because she plays, right? But yeah, it's not at the top of her list.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what's next? So we've gone through understanding motive. We also briefly touched on track record. So what's next?
All right. So the next one is okay. So let's go back to the knee surgeon, right? So I got Dr. Empathy. He's saying, oh man, your pain must be terrible. When did it start? How does it progress? I feel like he's trying to hear my story and he's empathetic. And then he goes, I want to get you back on the golf course. Now I know the motive. He wants my life to be better. So I go, okay, doc, let's go do it. Let's sign up. And then he says, I'm really excited about doing it too. It's gonna be. He said, I'm. I can't wait to do your knee because I'm an OB-GYN. I've never done a knee before. This is going to be awesome. Well, now we hit pause, right?
Right.
Because the third thing is ability. We've got to feel like the person has the ability to pull off what I'm entrusting them to. And so many times, I mean, right, I bet there's people listening to us today that have their best friend sometimes. They trust them with their life, and there's a lot of care there. They have great motives, and they say, "Gosh, man, we have so much fun together. We should start a business together. Then we could have fun all the time." So they find out that somebody they trust is the greatest friend in the world has the ability to be a great friend, but then they get 6 months into this deal, and they're going, "This guy doesn't have the ability to run a business because they didn't check the third box." And trust is contextual. We can trust people for certain things in certain contexts, but I don't want an OB-GYN doing my knee. I'm interested in a little different area of the body, right? And we gotta know the competency is there. And so a lot of people think trustworthiness is just, they don't lie, cheat, or steal, or, they care about me. But a classic example, I give you another example. Um, I was called into a situation where they wanted CEO coaching, which is kind of mainly what I do with teams and CEOs. And the board said, our CEO has been in place for about a year, and morale is slipping, and we're not getting the results we were looking for, and he needs a coach. And I said, well, how long has he been the CEO? A year? And they said, yeah. I said, how'd y'all pick him? They said, well, he was our COO for 10 years.
Mm.
And as COO, he really, really performed. Everybody loves this guy. He revamped, supply chains and infrastructure. He was incredible. And I said, and then they said, we promoted him to CEO. I said, well, where did he get the E? And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, he was a COO. Where did he get the E? He's a CEO now. And they said, well, we promoted him. I said, I know you put him in the chair, but where did he get the E abilities, the E chip? Because when I listen and look at y'all's company right now, I see somebody operating, not leading.
Right.
And that's a big deal. We can trust somebody with all of our hearts, but we're trusting them for something different. We got to make sure that we feel like they're going to be able to, the chute's going to open. Whoever packed his parachute, going skydiving for the first time, I don't want, my wife packing the chute. I don't
Right.
want somebody who's done it before.
Well,
So
that's also a good point too, because with your wife, you trust her on so many different levels and facets of life. But in this particular, it's not the trust is not transferable in this instance. And we need to be aware of that, because just because you trust somebody in one department of your life doesn't mean that can be applied broadly to other aspects of your life.
it does. I remember, I mean, if any parent out there has had a teenager got their driver's permit.
Yeah.
if,
I've got a 15-year-old. He just turned 15 about 2 months ago. So we're dealing with that right now.
all right, this is what drugs are made for. I mean, you're going to need them, right?
I'm getting a little bit more gray here for sure.
When you're sitting in that right seat for the first time, I'll never forget this. And, I had Olivia had practiced, golf carts for a million years and
Sure.
took her in
Right.
parking lot. But we go on the real streets for the first time. She had a permit. She goes down first, and she kind of half-ass stopped at the, roll through the stops. I said, Olivia, you didn't come to a complete stop. She goes, Dad, yes, I did. I said, no, you didn't. She said, Dad, I know how to drive. I said, Olivia, pull over. She pulls over, and I said, let me tell you something. Let me tell you how you know when you know how to drive. You'll know that you know how to drive when I can sit over here and not fear for my life. Right now, you don't know how to drive.
Yeah, that's right.
I trust her in so many ways, but to trust her to drive and later even to go out, past a 1 mile radius onto the 405 freeway. I mean, that she didn't have those abilities yet. And so it is very contextual.
What's interesting is what you're talking about now. We're talking about it in the context of how you can look for certain characteristics and qualities in other people so that they're trustworthy. But also, because I've read the book, like you're also talking about that these characteristics ought to be present in you. So I just want to make sure that the guys who are listening, as we're talking about being understanding and the correct motive and having ability. If you're a guy and you're thinking, well, how do I rebuild trust with my wife? Or how do I build trust with clients? These are the answers. You need to be these things. You need to understand other people. You need to have pure motives. You need to develop your ability. So I just want to make sure we reiterate that and hone in on that, because that's where a lot of guys are asking about as well.
Well, what you're saying is that's where it starts, right? It's really hard. It's hard to recognize something in people when we don't have it. And a lot of times, we'll do a lot of projecting and a lot of other stuff. But when you are a good listener, you spot people that aren't. When you have other people's best interests in mind, you spot the self-centered. And on the competency thing, I always tell, especially you know, young guys who are wanting to advance in their careers, they're always wanting to think about the connections and the networks and all this kind of stuff. And I go, look, guys, you can fake it for about a week, but you better get good at something.
Mm.
Because when you're good at something and you're adding value, you don't have to talk people in to doing something with you. They're coming to you because your ability's there. That's what they need. And a lot of people say, well, I want to be a leader. Well, nobody's following yet. So deliver and really deliver and get to be a real expert. They'll come to you because you have value. And it is a big deal for people to begin to be on the other side of the table when they begin to feel like this guy knows what he's talking about, or when he did this, that really worked, or the depth of preparation that he's done for this. You start to feel that, and you just start to feel more confident.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah.
I mean, even in marriage, there's abilities, there's skills that takes in a marriage. A friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, my daughter's boyfriend called me and wants to take me out to dinner."
Oh
He said,
no,
"I
here
think I
we
know what that
go.
means." Here we go. He's going to ask for her hand in marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, I need some advice. What do I do at that dinner? I said, well, I know what I'm going to do. I got two daughters. And he said, what? I said, I'm going to tell him to show up with his last 2 years' tax returns and his credit report. And he starts laughing and goes, yeah, like, right. Yeah. I said, I am dead serious. I am absolutely going to do that. He said, that's so intrusive. I said, look, I don't care about the numbers. He can white them out. I don't care what he makes. First, I just want to know, can he find them?
Right.
Like, do they exist? And how's he fulfilled other commitments, that he's made? If he's got a ding here or there, there's a narrative that can explain that. But when he's made commitments to people, how's he followed through on those? And I said, look, the uh, the job description for a husband is way different than a boyfriend. I mean, you can be caring and have good motives and all that, but when you start into that job, that takes some skills to manage life and to communicate and to resolve conflict. And I want to know if the guy's got the ability to do the surgery, and it's important or it's going to fall on his face.
One term that you used in the book was trust muscle. And I like that framing of it because a lot of the times we think that, well, I just need the magical phrase. That's what I hear in a lot of these guys' questions where they're, maybe they stepped out on their wife and they're trying to work things out, and they'll reach out to me and they'll say things like, Ryan, I did this thing and I'm trying to rebuild trust. What do I do? And inherently, I think embedded into that question is, what should I say, or what tactic should I employ in order to gain her trust, which is just a strategy. It's not deep. The motive isn't the right motive, to your point earlier. It's really developing, building that trust muscle. And as we do that, the results seem to take care of themselves, right? If you go to the gym and you think, well, I want to bench press 300 pounds, that's a good starting point, but you have to go in and you have to build your muscle every single day. And if you're doing that correctly, the result is inevitably going to take care of itself.
It's going to just work itself out because you're getting stronger. Your skills are getting better in all these areas. And, what I would say to him is, there's not one magic bullet. It's like Ryan just said, you're going to undergird her with a process of doing a bunch of things 1,000 times. And gradually she's going to fall back into trusting you. She's going to fall like a trust fall at some cheesy offsite. She's going to fall into the relationship. And I mean, what would think about this? Let's take that guy who stepped out on his wife, and he says, you know, I got to get some help to figure out how I could do something so stupid. So I'm gonna go see a therapist. and I'm gonna find out what is wrong with me. And then he comes back, say after a few weeks in, he comes back and he says, you know what I've learned I'm not really good at resolving conflict. I get defensive, and I interrupt and I try to invalidate what people are feeling. I signed up for this communications workshop, and I'm gonna go to it. He's not talking her into anything. She's looking at him going, whoa, he's working on himself, getting better, gaining skills. You know, when she sees that, and then as you're saying, he'll start to live those out differently because he's turning into a better communicator, a better conflict resolver, a better whatever it is. We feel those, if you play golf, you play with a guy and he sucks, and 6 months later, all of a sudden he shoots 72. You go, what happened to him? Well, he got a bunch of lessons, right? So and the wife's going to feel that. The teammates are going to feel that at work. So you are right. Going to the gym, doing the work, there's no shortcut.
I think what ends up happening with a lot of people is they try to correct their behavior. And that's good. If we mess up and screw up with our wife or in a business arrangement or a client, we try to correct our behavior. But if there's a track record, to your point earlier about track records of poor performance or under delivery or flat out lying about what you're going to do and not doing it, it's going to take some time. And even if you change, and we will, a lot of the times I think it's viewed as manipulation in the short term.
It's
Because
viewed as a is that what you said?
I think so. I think people see
Oh
it and
yeah.
it's such an abrupt change and they're so used to something else that they think, oh, well, this person is just trying to manipulate me. Do you see
Yeah,
that?
it's like the guy that ignores his wife for a long time and then screws up, and the next day, 6 dozen flowers show up. It's
Right.
like
Exactly. Exactly.
I remember this is back when they called assistants secretaries. It was their National Secretary Day, and my business partner and I had gone to a meeting, and we're driving back. We stopped at the florist to get our assistants flowers. So we're standing in line behind this guy, and he turns to us and goes, "So what'd you do?"
Oh, yeah. Yep. Exactly.
That's that's what all of a sudden I'm going to convince him I'm great. Well, you know, you're going to have to. You can't talk your way out of something you behaved your way into. So you're going to behave your way back into
That's a great way to say it. Behave your way back into trust. That's really powerful. I like
it.
that
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah. Okay. So we've covered a lot here, but it seems like there's one other. We've got five. So we've got understanding, motive, ability, track record, and then one other factor with regards to building trust.
Yeah. The fourth one is I'm going to use the word character, but I don't want character to just mean moral character. If we don't have, if somebody lies, cheats, or steals, then trust is over with until that's solved. Okay. But a lot of times when people say it's got good character, that's kind of what they mean. No, I trust him. He wouldn't lie to me. But when we're talking about character in the trust sense, what we're talking about is somebody's entire makeup. Like, how are they glued together? For example, if I pick my surgeon and now we set the date, he has all these other qualities, and he says, I want you to. I'm about to do one of these, and we got a theater in the OR, and you can look through the window and you can watch me do a knee replacement, which I would never do before I got one right. I don't want to see.
It's probably a smart idea.
Yeah, I'll never go do it if I watch one. But what if he did that? And so I'm looking in the window, and Dr. Empathy is competent working on somebody, and then 5 minutes into it, all of a sudden he goes, "Oh crap, he's bleeding! The guy's bleeding! Somebody do something!" And he goes crazy. He might have all the abilities in the world, but if a guy can't be cool under pressure, if he's impulsive, if he's easily rattled, if he's easily angered, for example, or somebody doesn't have some kind of perseverance and can stick to it, there's contexts in which we need we need the makeup of the person in addition to the abilities. I mean, how many people have you worked with? They have great abilities, but they're an idiot when it comes to keeping their cool. They go off on people, or they don't follow through on things. This personal makeup is really really important, and so and again, it's contextual. I had a brother-in-law who's a Navy SEAL, and if the bad guys were coming after me, Mark's makeup, I mean, nothing right. I mean, I want Mark going after me
For
after them.
sure, of course.
But if my dog dies, I need a shoulder to cry on. I'm not calling Mark. How he was glued together is not for the dark night of the soul. He'd say, "Well, it's a dog. We'll go shoot another one. You won't worry about it." He was just kind of like that. But he was awesome guy. We actually lost Mark in Iraq. He was killed on a mission.
Oh, geez.
But he was the greatest. But when it comes to kind of compassion in the moment of pain, he's going to help you. He's going to put his arm around you, but he's not going to be what you need in that moment. I'd
Not going to
call
be
him,
fun.
yeah, exactly. I'd call him one of my more compassionate friends. But if the bad guys are coming after me, I'm not calling them, right? And so, what are you trusting this person to do? And do they have the makeup to do it? I mean, if you're a boss and you're sending somebody on a turnaround project, and there's going to be a year before there's any good news, you don't want the kind of person that needs a lot of attaboys and needs to feel good about themselves all the time. You want somebody who loves to eat problems for breakfast. So, looking at somebody's makeup, and this is all the emotional intelligence. I mean, Harvard proved this over multi-year research, that you get to the C-suite in businesses and they all look the same. IQ, years in the industry, business acumen, education. They're all the same, but there's this big gap on the high performers and all that stuff, the emotional intelligence stuff. That's personal makeup. That's how they glue together as a character.
I also think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's something to be said for the way that you present yourself too. For example, if I came to this podcast without my notes or without reading the book or knowing anything about you or your work, like how is that going to build trust? How is that going to foster a powerful conversation? If I came without video quality or without audio quality, or I look like a complete slob, that just shows I don't care. It's a level of disrespect for you instead of a level of respect of showing up on time, presenting myself well, making sure things are dialed where they need to be. That's often overlooked because it seems like guys tend to look at that as vanity, like, oh, you just want to look good. Well, that's part of the equation we ought to consider.
And it communicates, right? It says something, and it's almost the look good or not look good. It's not about the looks. It's about the makeup of this person. Have they even thought about the context we're in? Have they thought about what your audience needs? Have they thought about what you're expecting? And Ryan, I'll just make an observation about you. Early on in this interview, you said, as I was reading through the book, it's a little phrase there. I instantly just kind of went to another level because I felt like, because I've never met you before, I felt like, oh, this guy's showing up like knowing what this is going to go differently, and it fuels the whole dynamic. But it was exactly what you're saying, that you had the makeup to think about this and spend some time doing it, and it changes everything.
Yeah. One concept you talk in the book is about breaking trust barriers, and that's common. Maybe you've done something, or one thing that happens quite often is that somebody may have trust issues, and it has nothing to do with you. It may have to do with past experiences that they have. What
Yeah.
would you recommend to a guy who's trying to break down some of those walls? That could be an intimate connection, that could be a romantic interest, that could be a potential business partner or a client. How do you recognize the barriers that they have erected? And then how do you begin to break those barriers down?
It's a good question, because a lot of times we'll move into persuasion mode. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to, oh, I'm different, or that's not going to happen here, or whatever. Which is, obviously that's all good and important, but a lot of guys run into this because they're you know the woman they're dating or their wife um, has had some really bad experiences and maybe even sexual trauma or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, they're surprised that she has some walls and some, fears and reactions. And that trust muscle systemically in their whole body, mind, and soul has been dinged. The turtle is pulled back in the shell. And what's really, really important, number one, don't personalize it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about you. They would do this with anybody. And so when somebody has difficulty trusting us and you take that as a narcissistic injury, I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say, when you question something on you saw a spreadsheet or expense report or something, it didn't make sense, and you're trying to figure out, and you call and say, what is this? And they go, what, you don't trust me?
Mm.
Are you questioning my integrity?
Right.
Well, I wasn't, but I am now.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
And they instantly their ego is bruised because you don't trust them. So look, this isn't about you. Okay. This is about her. And for some reason, which we don't know all of what goes into that for her yet, for some reason, her system is hitting pause. You may be doing everything great. That's a big first step, to not get defensive, to not, try to prove yourself. What you've got to do is exactly go back to square one and empathize and try to understand. Tell me about it. What does it feel like to you? Where'd that happen? How did it, what happens inside of you? What helps when I do whatever? What scares you? And now you've gone over into her world, or in business, if there's an ability to trust and delegate, find out why. Get curious. What are you afraid of is going to happen? Let's see what we can do with that. And that builds the first, it's sort of like you're going over a canyon. You're putting a board over the canyon. You're building a bridge over to their side where you can walk over their side and then bring them back. But what we ask them to do is jump over the canyon. Their system is not going to do that.
Yeah. Too much risk associated with that to make that giant of a leap.
Their whole, their amygdala is fight, flight, or freeze, and they have fear. They're going to push against you, or they're going to withdraw, or they're going to get frozen. And you got to calm down the amygdala system first, and the most powerful way of doing that is empathy.
Hmm. The problem with that is it takes a long time, right? It's like, I mean, look, I'm a hard charger. I'm sure you are too. We're both ambitious men. Guys listening to this are ambitious. They've got goals and objectives and they want to accomplish them yesterday. And when you're dealing in interpersonal communication, like things don't happen yesterday and they don't happen today. And it can be very frustrating.
It can be frustrating, and there's a lot of research. The male brain gets activated and tends to get defensive and push against at a rate of about 6 billion times faster than the female brain, and that's why a lot of times I tell guys, like, look, if she's, and let's call it, I don't mean this in a negative way, but if she's griping about something, that's the best thing you could ever hear. That means she cares and she's looking to you for help.
Good
But
point.
what we'll do is we'll hear it as criticism. Let me tell you, when you're in trouble, it's when they stop griping.
When they shut down. Definitely.
That's right.
Yeah. Interesting
Hear,
reframe on that.
yeah, exactly. Hear a complaint. She needs you. Hear that as an invitation. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Fix it. Listen to it. Empathize with it. As long as she's still, unless she's a, character disorder, which Some guys are married to women that you and vice versa that you'll never satisfy because they're critical, and that problem's got to be dealt with. You're not going to empathize with that for 40 years and fix it because it's not going to fix it. But I'm talking
Yeah.
about the normal problems of, can you throw that in the hamper instead of, to take that as criticism instead of I'm trying to get closer to you. That's that's a big deal.
Yeah. I like that. One other topic as we close out for today is you talk about not making the same mistakes again, because it's easy to, I think, do things temporarily or to fix things, and then what ends up happening is things get smoothed over, and I don't know if they get resolved necessarily, but it gets painted over and it looks, on the exterior, it looks pretty good, and then we seem to fall back into old patterns and old habits. How do we avoid doing that as it relates to trust?
Well, you've hit on a really important one because you don't. I mean, nobody buy a house and get a termite report back and says bunch of ugly stuff going on in those walls. Oh, let's
Right.
paint it, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to come back. The the thing that's really important, I think, for all of us to do, and this is it's in marriage, it's with parenting, it's in business, it's all of it, is look, accept the fact you're going to screw up. Okay, you're human. You're gonna get rattled and bark at somebody, or you're gonna be impatient, or you're gonna, you know, get selfish and not show up sometimes. Something. We all make mistakes. Now you're gonna hear about it. Either they're gonna tell you, or you're gonna see some emotional consequence. So we'll find out. Life has given us a 360 review all the time if we're listening. Everybody has problems and makes mistakes. A problem will never kill you if you solve it. Here's the problem: when we do it again, now we don't have a problem. We've got a pattern.
Hmm.
Patterns will kill you because patterns are, it's like mutation in a DNA, and DNA begins to define identity. And now you're no longer the guy that, you know, didn't show up to my game, daddy, last week. You're the dad that doesn't show up to games.
Hmm.
So, one of the biggest things that we can do in business, and I mean, even in trying to get in shape, you wake, alarm goes off one morning or whenever, and you go, I can't do it today.
That was
And
me
you,
this morning.
yeah, exactly. And you miss a day, you're going to miss a day. If it goes off the next day and you don't go, you better be careful
Yeah.
because that's how neurological wiring starts to be built down a different path. And so watch for patterns. And if you have patterns in the wrong direction, you're going to end up in a different place. So we have to watch what repeats itself.
Well, Dr. Cloud, this has been fascinating. I'm really excited to get this conversation out to the guys because I get so many questions, and I have questions personally too about how to restore trust and how to build trust. It's crucial. Like you said, it's the framework, it's the foundation for just about anything else, is building trust with other people. Can you let the guys know where to go to learn more about your work and to pick up a copy of your latest book?
Well, you can find the book. It's called Trust. Subtitle is When to Give It, When to Withhold It, How to Earn It, and How to Fix It When It Gets Broken. You can get it anywhere. All the booksellers have it. Um, if they want to find out more and go deeper, if they go to my website, which is drcloud.com, if you scroll down, I've got two online platforms. One is for leaderships called Leadership University, and that's in the business context. It's a online leadership development path. Big companies use it, individuals use it. And the other one, which is maybe really, really cool to do with your spouse, even, it's called boundaries.me. And I've got over 100 courses on there, actually, in everything from performance to conflict resolution to addictions to depression, anxiety, mental health, marriage, parenting, all that. So just you can find it all there.
Excellent. We'll sync everything up so the guys know where to go. I appreciate you taking time. I know you're a busy man, but this has been a valuable conversation. And I just want to let you know that I'm grateful we could do this. And I really appreciate your work because it's helped me personally in my own life. So thanks for joining us today.
Well, I appreciate it, Ryan, and also the fact that you're returning the old art of guys getting together and talking. This is what we need to do.
I've got I've got a couple of old school barber chairs that I'm going to have restored because I want to
Oh,
do this. And I was thinking about for the podcast, it'd be cool because it would be a throwback and a nod to the days when guys would go to the barber and they would jack jaw and talk about politics and women and critical issues and cultural events. And I thought it could tie in really nicely to what we're trying to do here.
that is a great idea. And I'm an old fart, so I grew up in the days of barbershops, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just when you're in the chair, guys would sit around in the chairs, come early waiting on theirs because you're right. It's kind of like a bar.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully we can get those restored fairly quickly and elevate this a little bit in that way too.
There you go. Well, I'll come to you for a haircut and we chat.
Perfect. I'll have to bring somebody else in. You wouldn't want me to cut your hair, but I'll bring somebody else in. They'll cut both of our hair. We'll have a great conversation in the meantime.
We'll do it.
All right. Thank
Thanks.
you. I really
Appreciate it.
appreciate the opportunity to talk today.
We'll talk again. Thanks.